Alright, making a video. An Minden video. Would like to make more videos, just timing. Just been very busy. Physically tired, all that kind of stuff. Just a weird year. In some ways good, in some ways unsettling. And then just the life thing, you know. It's just good days, bad days. But anyway. Alright, it is just curious. I've had a lower tone in some respects. I'm trying to be more diplomatic. And the funny thing was that it sort of showed up, though, in the Glenos open room, where there was a point where I got really angry. And just a little short period. And I just saw myself doing that. I said, this isn't the new you, you know. You're not supposed to get frustrated. But it seems like the more I try to be delicate and careful, the more I get crap back. So it is kind of funny that it isn't. There's no reciprocal reinforcement of any kind of positive. So again, this reward and punishment is going to be the subject of this video essentially, and the nature of feeling and sensation, and that being its purpose. So anyway, it was just kind of funny that the the thing hanging over me in terms of trying to communicate was sending me exactly the opposite signals in terms of there was no reward for the new Gary. In the sense that wherever new Gary was on display, it didn't seem like it was working. Anyway, so the last couple of physics videos I've made have been, I think, very carefully stated, not too aggressive, and the response has been crap. I mean, just insane crap even. And so Piro typed some insane crap, and it's also related to this feeling thing, and he did a video on this subject. He's been done a couple of videos, and I fundamentally argue that Piro doesn't really understand evolution, and he doesn't really understand anything about mechanical things. He's not a mechanic. He's not a mechanically inclined kind of person. He's a guy who plays with abstractions, not with realities. He plays in a magical world, programming. You can create all kinds of fairy programs to fix a problem, you know. Although it does have limitations. I mean, there are real limitations, mostly to create security and all this other kind of stuff that inhibit having any ultimate or great liberty in what you can do with a program. But anyway. Alright, so I don't know which way to go. I'll play some of his video, and but again, I'm more caught up not in the particulars of the inaccuracies as I am in the way we argue, and I'm still finding that incredibly frustrating. Is that I've been over this stuff and over this stuff and over this stuff, and it's just because it's not in categories and well labeled, and that's what breaks down all of this stuff. And so there's that, and then there's this other layer, you know, another connected layer to these other people making videos, like all these people complaining about the trannies wanting pronouns. And frankly, I want everybody to have more pronouns. I want everybody to be barcoded. I want them to wear it on their hat. Make America great again. I love Trump or something. Just so I know what kind of asshole they are. I want people to be labeled. So if they're going to voluntarily label themselves for me, why would I find that a bad idea or a bad thing? That sounds really cool. That a he, your male, identifies as, hey, wait a minute. No, I'm not. I'm not a normal guy. I'm not one of those males you read about. You know. I'm this different kind, and you know I might want to rub your hiney, you know, something like I'd like to know. So this is more information, not less information. This is a good thing. I want lots of pronouns. I want acronyms. I want us to all have names, like our actual name wouldn't be a name, but it would be a describing statement. So it's like we could say you would be called a Gary if you believed in Ephilism and this and this and this, and then you'd be a Gary. And a John would be this, and a Mike would be that kind of thing. I want categories, I want labels, I want more information. So that's a very good thing. But that's what's missing in these conversations, is there's no order, there's no obligation to deal with arguments that have been made, and there's lists of the evidence. So it's, see, you can relate to almost anything. I have 12 Angry Men on a reoccurring movie slideshow. And, they went over the evidence piece by piece. And they had to kill every piece of it, one piece at a time, kind of a thing. Each argument had to be dealt with. And they weren't done until they finished killing all the evidence, making all of it doubtable. And that doesn't have to happen in any of these conversations. No premises have to be established, no axioms, no boundaries for the conversation in terms of agreements, and then you have a conversation based on the points you agree on. It's constantly arguments about things where the premises aren't agreed on. And so what's the point? You can't argue it if you don't agree on the premises, the facts. So until you identify as irreconcilably non-compatible based on factual perception about how the actual physics works, so to speak, or how actual politics works, like with Pyrrho or something, then yeah, there's no conversation about it, because we don't agree on what the outcome is in terms of a harm, because we don't agree on the values going in. Yeah, pretty much. So I'm thinking these videos, I have to do videos that just go one step at a time, one premise at a time, and almost insist that, look, if you disagree on one of these premises, we really shouldn't communicate. There's no point in you trolling me, there's no point in us arguing, because we don't agree on a fundamental fact of reality. And so this argument isn't really about the argument, it's about this premise. It's like arguing abortion with somebody who believes in God. There's just no point. You think God created that little squirmy parasite in the woman's stomach. You think it has a soul. You think a lot of crazy shit I don't think. How can we possibly have the same opinion? It would be idiotic if we did have the same opinion. And we're going to be irreconcilably of different opinion as long as we don't have the same opinion regarding what the nature of that parasite is. And the very fact that it's certainly not more conscious than a frickin' puppy. Because it's not. Its welfare is not more important in any rationally discernible way. It is not a bigger crisis for a fetus to be killed than for a puppy to be killed. It would be insane to think so. The puppy has a consciousness. The puppy is in the world, actively participating. If the puppy was asleep, then they might be equals. That kind of thing. So we're not having arguments about anything. It's just pointless. So, alright, so I made, I think, like I said, a rather disciplined physics video, just pointing out how physics is made. It's been too aggressive in conviction. They have a little bit of evidence, and they take that little bit of evidence and turn it into a conviction, and it's not good enough for a conviction. It's not good enough to close the door to speculation regarding other alternative explanations. Not even close to good enough. And or to expect people, reasonable people, have to believe what you're saying. Now, there is enough evidence for things like evolution, overwhelming evidence for conviction. But for light being bent by gravity, not so much. For the existence of light as a wave in fields, No. There's evidence of frequency. And in the whole Einstein sense, there's certainly evidence of a convergence. Something's causing stuff to move in. Okay? But there's no proof of attraction, and there's certainly no proof that it's a bent space that's doing it. And likewise with time, there's only a proven connection between the function of atoms, their metabolism, how fast they radioactively decay, and certain other physical processes of chemistry, and velocity. Velocity slows those things down. Now the cause of that, there's lots of room for speculation, rational speculation. So anyway, and we don't have to accept their truth. They're emphatic statements of truth based on thin evidence of thin correlations. Alright, so he says, it's amazing that we have no theory about where photon frequency comes from, but we can broadcast whatever frequency we want. Amazing. So again, he's arguing that somehow you have to understand how a magnet works and what causes magnetism to make a compass. And now history proves you don't have to do any of that. You have to just understand the effect. You don't have to understand the causes to use something, to get utility out of it. And clearly that happened with radio waves. Clearly that's happened with everything we've ever used. People didn't understand exactly why glass magnified, but once they discovered it, they didn't care how it's doing it. They just cared that it did it. They understood the effect. So this is just such a meaningless argument to make to somebody. And you know, with the we part too, like we the believers in this fake theory is what made us capable of inventing. And that's not the truth. Edison got plus and minus wrong. Getting plus and minus wrong didn't mean not Edison, Benjamin Franklin. This doesn't mean he didn't find utility, didn't find function, couldn't make a lightning rod. Of course he could. So this is the vacuous, this is a troll response. It doesn't address the actual issue made in the points made in the video, which is your evidence is thin, it's weak, it's not anywhere near complete enough for arrogance to be your mantra. And clearly, anybody with a wrong theory of how a combustion engine works can certainly drive a car. Certainly somebody with a wrong theory about what causes electricity could fly a kite in a storm. That's obvious. So why this is just a troll comment. Anyway, another troll comment is they are comfortable, ? But their ideas make you uncomfortable. Comfort equals emotional. So he thinks the dissonance somebody has when somebody says 2 + 2 = 3, that's an emotion. What causes the dissonance is emotional. No, what causes the dissonance is the understanding that that doesn't fit anything, any rational pattern with what is known to be reality. That looks like I'm seeing a UFO or I'm seeing the abominable snowman. It doesn't look right. So I'm going to look again and again. I'm going to strain my eyes and maybe I'll get a magnifier to see. You know, we don't even know exactly. There's still arguments about what causes lift on airplane wings. And yet we've had airplanes for a long time. Again, it's just such a lousy argument to make. But anyway, so this idea that I'm arguing about a state of mind when I'm arguing about a standard of proof. I'm not making an emotional argument. I'm making an argument that your standards of proof and evidence are horrible, lousy, rotten, and they're not likely to produce good trying of evidence and good science. And you didn't counter-argue that with anything but a troll remark, because you're a troll, properly identified as such. Alright, so I'll play his arrogant, another one of his arrogant videos where he doesn't identify who he's even talking to, what argument he's countering, if there is one. Just straw man, vague, innocuous. He's completely acquired Anakantavad style of, I will identify nothing. My targets will be ambiguously defined boogeymen, you know, and of course I'll always win that way because nothing has to be accountable. And it's just such bullshit. So we'll play this crap. One of these buttons should play it. I have to turn the volume on. That would be a good idea. Computer's been a bit buggy lately, so I had to turn it off because the computer would do all
So in terms of how to handle, I'm going to talk, of course, more about these, the intellectual emotions, the analytic emotions.
Alright, so there's no analytic emotions. The emotions are reward and punishment. They're positive and negative. And I would argue. And that you can see that in any kind of emotion you have. You have a thought, and the thought either causes a dissonance, a conflict, or there's no conflict. Or it either supports the idea that I will be a hero, I will save the day, I will find the answer, I have the right answer, or it says I'm a loser, I'm an asshole, I'm a pussy, I'm a shithead. It does that kind of thing. And that emotion comes from being successful or failing. It's measuring success and failure. The emotion isn't the thought. The thought comes first. The idea of that doesn't seem right or that seems right comes first. The emotion is the byproduct of the dissonance, the conflict with what you have established as something valuable or truthful. It's like somebody says your mother is a cheap whore, but they say it with some sort of evidence. That could cause some dissonance. That can cause an emotional reaction, but the emotional action will only happen if you know what being a whore is, so to speak.
That are involved. Feelings. I consider feelings and emotions the same.
Yes, they are the same, but the point is they're sensations of reward and punishment. That's why they exist. They exist, I would argue, exclusively for that purpose. Now, because it's a naturally designed system, we often have feelings that aren't anywhere any kind of constructive or any kind of productive, because nature doesn't have to do it perfectly, it just has to do it good enough. You just have to survive. You don't have to survive to a very high and precise standard.
Thing. You get these impulses, and they have...
So the impulse is really just made out of a sensation that's positive or a sensation that's negative. You're either compelled because it seems like you'll profit from the circumstance, or you understand that you might lose and therefore run away. It's flight or fight, but it's not... it's secondary to the thought that comes first.
Qualia. And they have an emotional content. So, I've been talking about, it starts with curiosity, goes to conflict.
No, it isn't starting with that silly. And what is curiosity? Curiosity is a recognition of a lack of information and a challenge. It's almost there's a basketball and there's a hoop. It's almost, the compulsion is the ball should be in the hoop kind of thing. So we complete the puzzle. the puzzles throw down, the pieces are thrown in front of us, the brain automatically says, clean up the pieces. Put them in the right place. They're in chaos. They're in the wrong order. So we see something in disorder, we're compelled to see if we can put it into order. That's the nature of curiosity. It's first a dissonance with the brain's primary function, which is control. Not knowing is a threat to control. That's why the emotion is provoked.
Comprehension. You can obviously feel like you comprehend something and get it wrong.
So feelings of comprehension. Again, the feeling of grokking, getting it, it fits. That feeling first is a consequence of you knowing, oh, that puzzle piece goes next to that one because it has the same colors or it's in the same contrast, so it's got to be in that area, blah, 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 and you got it. That feeling is a reward for doing something rational, for adding the numbers up correctly, getting a right answer, solving the problem. That's the motivation, is mastering and therefore gaining control.
So that right there proves that it's separate from actually being correct. And if you don't have the feeling of comprehension...
Actually being correct, right. Your emotions don't have anything to do with the truth. That's right. You can have an emotion of confidence when you're full of shit. You're actually way off base. But because you don't know it. So if nobody told you 2 + 2 is 4, you might have a great deal of confidence that it's 3 for some reason. But it's misplaced. Or you had some evidence. I mean, there's probably examples I can give that are not quite as stark or black and white or obvious, but where you have your theory seems reasonable, but it's just that you haven't been exposed to the better theory.
If you don't have the feelings of confidence, then you're going to believe in that thing. And the reasoning, the so-called reasoning, is an emotional process.
See, it's not. No, it's not. The emotions, the only part of the process they're connected to are the fact of whether you have facts to justify what you're doing. But I'm just saying the emotions are a byproduct of the thought process. And the only reason why you could possibly feel good about getting the wrong answer is because you don't have a highest standard to stop you from getting the wrong answer. You're capable of wrong answers. And it's well, we see with people who are truthers. They're not wrong about just one thing. They're usually wrong about a lot of things. Because the function of their don't make that same dopey mistake again. They don't learn from their mistakes. Good example. This is like the guy. You want to know how to not learn from your mistakes? This is the guy to talk to.
It's just that it's not all emotions. You need to limit yourself. There's irrational emotions, love, fear.
So now you just called fear an irrational emotion. One of probably the ones that have done the human race the most good. He calls the irrational emotion. Why? Why does he do that? When most people have fears, they're fairly reasonable fears about real possibilities. Now, yes, some people think they're going to get hit by a meteor. Okay, now that might be an irrational fear in terms of their proportion, because they're more likely to get run over in their living room by a drunk driver, statistically. But then we're just talking about their ignorance then, right? Because if they knew they were more likely to get run over by a drunk driver, they'd also be probably building a drunk driver barrier in front of their house too, putting up some cement mailbox posts or something, besides the cement dome. So it's only their ignorance, because they tend to react. Now you say it's irrational to be risk averse. When I say, no, that's about as rational as you can get when the reward of what you're risking for is preposterously silly. It's like jumping out of airplanes. One could say, why would I risk splatter, ooh, pain, pain, hospital, hospital, long time, bad, bad, for a silly little 3 minutes? I mean, it's a silly 3 minutes. Why would I risk anything for that?
These things don't even try to help you with what we call intellectual reasoning, and that's generally
Probably less than 3 minutes, actually. But anyway, no, they don't help you with intellectual reasoning. They're just symptoms, and they're ways that your brain makes it something you have to deal with, because the sensation is maintained. Now, maybe the dissonance would be too, but I'm just saying you wouldn't pay attention to the dissonance if it wasn't causing an irritation, if it wasn't gnawing at you, if there wasn't a negative sensation of risk of failure tied to it, something attacking your comfort and control is being threatened, and you need to fix it or it's going to nag you.
what people are thinking about when they say to do without their emotions. But another one I wanted to talk about is the feeling of recognition, which is...
So again, to call it a feeling of recognition, I mean, no, you recognize something, and that's like seeing two puzzle pieces that fit together. You're just going to get rewarded for doing that seeing that logical connection and gaining that control. So again, it doesn't have anything to do with the emotion first. No, first you recognize correlation, you recognize connection, which implies more control.
Behind identification and all comparisons that are very important in logic.
By the way, he doesn't know anything about logic, because he doesn't understand that logic is something facts do. Facts cause logic. There is no logic without the facts, and the fact that the facts are and the facts always line up. The facts always point. The facts create a vector of the new fact. They point to it. So he thinks logic is something we do to facts, when no, facts do the logic. Facts take care of that themselves.
The concept of similarity, recognizing dissimilarity, and again...
yes, and that's what the facts are doing. The facts are demonstrating correlations between things blatantly. You don't do anything. The recognizability is in the fact that it is the same property. You see it in the two different things, and that becomes a fact.
People, you want to tell yourself this is purely analytic thing, but it's like if you go to Santa Monica with your family and a character...
So, he thinks he can break the rules of determinism, logic, and analytical by relating it to some fact that we're capable of abstraction. The subject isn't whether we have an imagination and whether we can make up stories. Yes, we can make stories about cats in hats or cats in pusses in boots. We can make up lots of stories about lots of silly things. But we can also create stories, narratives, descriptions that are acutely accurate. We have a choice to be phantasmagorical, silly thinkers, or reasonable, rational, disciplined, purposeful, useful, functional, decent humans.
Artist draws a caricature of your mom and go, oh look, it looks just like you, Mom, but not really. It's a cartoon face, big head, little tiny body. And
it's a simplification, an overdrawn simplification. I can call you lots of things. I can pay attention, I can exaggerate any feature or any function you have, eating, shitting, pissing, whatever it is. I can exaggerate the importance of that and ignore how big your feet are or something like that. So what? What does that have to do with whether or not as thinking people, we can define the rules of reasonable thinking in terms of how big a Sasquatch am I allowed to into the story of what humans are.
Simple. That similarity it comes from a recognition that you feel, not approval.
A recognition that you feel. So caricatures have something to do with feelings. They don't have something to do with, again, recognizing features and merely exaggerating them. I mean, the fact that it's a caricature, it's by definition an exaggeration.
Thing. And so what you're trying to do is just like with other emotions, you try to put your feeling of trust.
You try to do something to your brain. So again, he's talking as if there is a homunculus that has control over the brain and will make the brain do certain things. That doesn't happen. You have to have the idea that you have this thing called control, and then you have to have the idea in terms of some process by which, well, I'll say this mantra or I'll go through these steps and they will enable me to successfully accomplish the task. But none of that has anything to do with a feeling. That has to do with an understanding. You understand that that's the right road. You find that you figure out that, well, drinking's causing me trouble. I find out, oh, the right road is let's not drink so much. Once you understand that to be the right road, then as soon as you're not going down that road, as soon as you see yourself, hey, wait a minute, I was supposed to take that right road and I'm on the left road now. Yeah, okay, I get it. I better, cross over on the bridge, the next bridge, I better take it.
You try to put your feelings of trust in someone, and you can find later.
Whatever, all this bullshit means absolutely nothing. What does trust have to do with anything about philosophy or any of that shit? This is just such mush.
You misplaced it, and that's how you have to double guess your intellectual emotions. The idea that you've identified.
Again, what does this have to do with your? You have to double guess your intellectual. No, whatever that means. Double guess. There's no intellectual emotion. It just doesn't exist. There's the tendency for us to identify something and then to declare it a fact and then to hold it with. It will be emotional. It'll cause emotional dissonance if something attacks that fact. Once it's established as that's my fact, I'll be defensive of it until I have evidence that no, the truth is I failed when I made that a fact. And then you have to do that humiliating thing. You have to go through the humiliation emotion of recognizing the depth of your imperfection and your unreliability. And that again is a dissonance causer. It's also attacking your credibility and your integrity. And that's difficult for any human being because emotionally that's going to be unpleasant to accept that you're an incredible loser.
Things. I've noticed people that use fear a lot in their reasoning tend to seem to be related to misidentification.
Again, and for all purposes, I've known people who use fear, and then it could be the same rhetoric could be applied to, people call you a rape hysteriast, fearmongerer, or global warming fearmongerer. So no point even going there. I've known people. Yeah, I've known people are assholes too. You're one of them, asshole.
In other words, the fear seems to precede the misidentification.
Says you. And again, no articulation to any example. So no evidence for this argument. Just I've known people who have made some kind of put their fear before their reasoning or something. No evidence. No example. No anything. Just a claim by a douche.
So yeah, identification is an important one, and there's a lot.
Yes, what we connect to what we identify as in the category of bad, what we identify as in the category of good, is a real problem because people have done that very badly. A lot of people put police officers in the category of little perfect people. No, they're not little perfect people.
To talk about, and really these feelings do interact with other feelings laterally. I mean, your non-rational feelings can have a strong influence.
So again, your non-rational feelings, meaning your beliefs that are not fact-based or reason-based, but might be just subjective and personal advantage-based, like tax cuts or something. The self-interest over the social interest, all that kind. It's not an emotion. It's a thought first.
It's biasing. You're recognizing things and identifying them, which affects your categorization, which affects your logic.
Well, it's exactly the opposite way around, okay? So it's the categorization and the logic that must be done correctly for your emotions to be appropriate.
So, really, to think rationally without your emotions is really just, we're talking about these ones that are not reliable. It's trying to limit yourself like a Vulcan to just the analytic emotions that help you.
Right, again, and Vulcans were purely, obviously not practicers of their own philosophy. Right? When Vulcan blew up, the Vulcans were all hysterical, like it's important that Vulcans exist. When other people's civilizations were blown up, no emotional reaction. When it's them, there's a reaction. The hypocrisy is the hypocrisy. And the Vulcans were full of it. So that's a bullshit argument. But the idea that logic is the way to go over paying any attention to your emotional responses, which are usually going to be based on what happened to you when you were still in diapers. Your emotional responses are going to tend to be tied to what you're conditioned to be. If you're a normal male and you love female anatomy, you have a certain reaction. You'll carry that reaction with you perhaps through all of your life. It doesn't mean that loving woman anatomy is better than loving man anatomy or loving dog anatomy for that matter. There's not some better anatomy. There's not some better visual image, just like art or anything else. Your favorite color you have in childhood likely drag through your whole life. The favorite kind of artistic expression you'll drag through your whole life. Those conditioned responses are conditioned. But they have nothing to do with your capacity to know my conditioned reactions, my subjective taste, how big I want a woman's breast to be. That's not some sort of empirical, some sort of perfect logic. No, it's a silly, subjective bigotry. And you can know that.
Do analysis, identification, curiosity, comprehension. Double checking those things. Double check your comprehension. That's why.
Double check your comprehension. What does that, could that possibly be somewhere made into a rational statement? What you should do is double check your reasoning. And make sure that when somebody says something like, your evidence is weak, that maybe you look at your evidence and say, yeah, it's not quite as good as I'd like it to be.
In science, we actually limit our sense of...
In science, we. So again, as if he is some kind of scientist, when he's a reckless, sloppy, imprecise, loose poos.
Comprehension to things that can be checked, right? Things that can be, that you can falsify.
Well, again, this idea of falsifying just doesn't mean anything in the context where you can't provify. What you really want to do is prove something. Attempting to falsify it doesn't mean anything if you can't grok, okay, the fact that there's other ways of thinking about it. If you're not willing to really test it, I mean, really testing it is breaking it all the way down. and be willing to say, well, what if Einstein was wrong? Is there some other way I can do this? But you people aren't even close to willing to do that. So this idea that you have any will to survive a falsification test is just more talk, no walk. You won't walk that road. You just talk that road.
With an experiment.
Again, this idea that there's always an experiment to solve the question, there isn't. There's no, it's like the videotape of the crime. No, there's no videotape, no film in the camera, blah, 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 blah. You're going to have to construct it out of circumstantial evidence, not hard evidence.
And so basically what you want to do is you want to have a process that goes from curiosity to comprehension.
Curiosity to comprehension, which really the argument should be recognition that information is power. So you don't need to have anything called curiosity. You just have to have the understanding that information is really good candy. Yum yum. And it will get you to a circumstance where you're going to make better conclusions, and that's like having a bigger dick.
In the middle, it's unmolested by your gut reactions to things.
Right, those are your emotions, idiot. So the very thing he says we should be listening to somehow, gut reactions, which are the emotions, those are the very things that will fuck it up. That's the noise you want to get out of the signal. That's not the noise you want to put into a signal anywhere. That's noise. And you want it to have as little effect as possible.
It's those kind of emotions. And where your regular emotions come in.
Your regular emotions. So there's a regular and the irregular ones.
This process is they get to spark your curiosity. You can go ahead and be.
So again, the emotions spark your curiosity. Not knowledge, not recognition of your ignorance. That doesn't spark your curiosity. Recognition of your need to do it you'll get paid. That won't spark it. No. Some stupid emotion will do it. No, a thought will do it.
You know, it's acceptable to get curious about you, like, I don't know, riding a bike. So you get curious about all the things and people that have ridden bikes and where it was invented. That's fine.
I don't think that has happened ever in the history of mankind, to tell you the truth. Unless you were going to the Olympics or something. And then you could see, if I was going to the Olympics and was a boxer, I might say, hey, this boxing thing has a lot to do with physics. And, and that little Japanese guy, he was always talking about all that physics stuff, and speed and impacts and velocities. And, maybe all that's important. And so maybe I'll learn some physics. So I'll know more about how I need to throw my punches to make them more effective. Yeah. So I'll win. And why would I do it? Not because I'm curious, but because I want to win.
But then leave those emotions out of while you're collecting all the facts, while you're identifying things. Try to keep those emotions to the side, just looking through the glass or whatever.
Yes, that's the basically the obligation is to always keep the emotions from making a decision. Now, having emotions is fine. Being emotional is fine. Just don't let them control the argument.
And then when you get to your conclusions, you got to try to apply those, possibly in limited ways, so that you can experiment and check that if that sense of comfort.
Yeah, whatever that even. Again, whatever. Can anybody take any value to that and check that? And you should step outside of your brain and analyze whether your brain has a dent in it, and and then walk around your brain and see if your brain is braining properly. Yeah, right, sure. Okay, I'll do that.
Comprehension seems justified by your ability to apply what you think you comprehend, the knowledge you think you comprehend.
So again, this apply thing, which is so dangerous in the pursuit of truth, the application. How useful is it? How can I apply it? So again, it's not about the fact that you're seeking something called the truth. Somehow you're seeking something like, what's in it for me? So it's just more Anacondavad bullshit of, no, the only truth value is, how do I use it? Yeah, fuck that shit.
And this is really what you guys are bad at. This is why
You guys making vague you guys references. Cop out pussy bullshit.
trouble figuring things out.
Yeah, same to you, fuckhead.
Intelligence isn't like, oh, you got a faster processor. No, it's knowing how to handle your intellectual emotions.
Oh, bullshit. Handle your emotions. Handle them with what? Your emotional emoter? I'll handle my emotions with my emoter? It's just such a crock of shit. You have to have an idea about, first, that the emotions are a problem. First, you have to recognize emotions not good sometimes. Therefore, they must not be allowed to control circumstances. Emotions not equal control. You have to know that first. And then you can do something about it.
So that you can decide what to be curious in.
Then you can decide what to be curious in. So again, the emotion is going to be decided by the thoughts you have about where you lack knowledge and where you're vulnerable. Your curiosity is going to be based on what will cause me to be humiliated or impoverished or homeless or lots of things. But that's what your curiosity is going to be based on, is often. And you have to recognize the difference in terms of a philosophical conversation versus a personal achievement conversation. So clearly what we do in our personal lives in terms of our ambitions or our curiosity can be substantially different than what we do in some sort of academic arena where we have to argue at the boardroom for a certain proposal. Different things require different analytic skills. And what you're supposed to be doing here on the internet is talking philosophy, not personal psychology.
You know, I know how to make myself curious about anything.
So again, he knows how to make himself curious. No, so he's just saying, I know how to be motivated. I know how what motivation is caused by. I know the mechanisms that trigger it. So that's like saying, I know how to give myself an erection by having certain kinds of thoughts. Duh.
Find myself in a situation of having to do something, and I'm like, it doesn't seem well. I turn on my curiosity and I can learn enough to get it done.
And blah, 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 blah. I turn on my... No, what you turn on is your recognition that the sooner I get this done, the more free time I'm going to have. And the better I get this done, I'll get a paycheck.
Usually becomes more interesting in the process as well. And really being smart, acting intelligent, is just having control of your intellectual, your analytic emotions.
Again, analytic emotions, which there aren't any. There's only reward and punishment. There's only feel good, feel bad. And you can have thoughts connected to good feelings and thoughts connected to bad feelings. And that's all there are. But to dice these into individual kinds of emotion, no, it's a kind of thought. The feeling is the same shitty feeling. Yeah.
But we all know that if we're purists.
So more of this, whatever this Pyrrhonist crap from, 2,000 or 4,000 years ago, where, they have the secret of the truth. Fucking bullshit. It's just this pantheist nonsense, this old Platonic philosophy of crap. Grow up and smell the 21st century, retard. Alright, so that's the end of that. Alright, that's I think good enough of a video. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I'll get to some other things. I mean, people did. A few people responded to the video about my housing circumstance, and I will get back to you with a video. I just haven't done it yet, with some details and blah blah blah. So busy. Yeah, I would then. Yeah, I have to get. Well, anyway, yeah. Whatever. I'll get to it eventually. I'm moving along. I'm just not moving as fast as I like to. People complain about all kinds of stuff. Some asshole ragged because there wasn't vegetables in my damn video. And I'm like, well, first off, vegetables aren't very interesting visually. But you know, so you show an apple tree, he says, well, there's only one apple tree. Well, there's actually 2 apple trees. And there's blueberry bushes. And yeah, I plant beets and some other stuff, but you know, they're not much to look at. Shithead. But yeah, I plant all vegetables. It's just that the critters take too much of that stuff. So, there's no point. Fucker.